On his first day back in office, Trump pardoned around 15,000 defendants charged or convicted in connection with the January 6 riots. The charges ranged from trespassing, obstruction, all the way up to seditious conspiracy and violent assault on law enforcement officers. Now, pardons for political protesters are not unheard of historically, but the scale of the pardon was unprecedented in modern American history. Trump is using the institution of a presidential pardon as a get-out-of-jail-free card for his many goons, cronies, and other bootlickers. Speaking of which, Rudy Giuliani was Trump's personal lawyer, and he was probably the most high-profile figure in the 2020 election controversy. He was filing lawsuits in battleground states, and he was telling the crowd on J6 that it was time for, quote, trial by combat. By November 2025, he was in serious financial trouble. He'd been ordered to pay $148 million to 2 election workers he had falsely accused of fraud. He declared bankruptcy and his law license had been suspended. Trump pardoned him preemptively. No federal charges were even pending. Giuliani's pardon came in the same batch as Mark Meadows, Trump's chief of staff who coordinated pressure on state officials and the DOJ, Sidney Powell, who promoted theories about election interference, Boris Epstein, no relation, one of Trump's closest senior advisors, and Jeffrey Clark, the DOJ official who drafted a memo urging states to delay certifying election results. Now, you may say that these people were prosecuted for political reasons, and fair enough. But other people on this list have been tried and convicted for more serious offenses, and they got a pardon anyway. Ross Ulbricht founded Silk Road, the dark web marketplace where users could buy and sell drugs, fake IDs, and other illicit substances using Bitcoin. At its peak, it was doing around $1.2 billion in transactions. In 2013, the FBI shut it down and arrested Ulbricht. He was convicted on 7 counts including drug trafficking, money laundering, and continuing a criminal enterprise. He was sentenced to double life in prison plus 40 years with no possibility of parole. Some people argue that a life sentence for a non-violent first-time offender was too harsh. Trump promised his libertarian base that he would free Ulbricht if he was re-elected. So this was a rare instance of a politician actually honoring their word, so it's something, I guess. But it still sets a dangerous precedent. A president unilaterally erasing a federal sentence for a literal drug dealer. Not because of justice, but because it was politically expedient to do so at the moment. With Ulbricht, at least you could say there was a political promise on the record. But with the next entry, the connection between the crime, the pardon, and Trump's personal interest starts getting a lot harder to explain away. Bitmex was one of the largest crypto exchanges in the world, processing billions of dollars in trades at its peak. They also deliberately chose not to implement any anti-money laundering controls. As a result, Bitmex became a conduit for funds tied to sanctioned countries, criminals, terrorists, and other miscreants. All 4 founders pleaded guilty to violating the Bank Secrecy Act and money laundering. Trump issued a pardon just hours before the payment of $100 million was due, saving Bitmex the money to the detriment of the Crime Victims Fund. Fun fact, this was the first time a pardon was granted to a corporation rather than a natural person. Now, why is this such a big deal? The crypto industry was one of the biggest financial backers of Trump's 2024 campaign. Crypto PACs donated tens of billions of dollars in exchange for regulatory relief, favorable legislation, and apparently a few get-out-of-jail-free cards. Trump called himself the first crypto president, helping deregulate the industry in exchange for money from the lobbyists. Keep this in mind because this is also going to be a recurring theme here. In the meantime, let's move on with the rest of the list with some good old-fashioned political favoritism and lobbying. Michele Fiore was a Republican politician, Las Vegas councilwoman, and according to the state prosecutors, a giant thief. In 2020, a Las Vegas police officer was murdered in the line of duty. His family and community wanted to build a memorial statue in his honor and launched a fundraising campaign. Fiore raised over $70,000 from the donors who believed they were contributing to that memorial. Instead, Fiore spent the money on her own rent payments, her daughter's wedding, and cosmetic surgery. According to the indictment, not a single dollar went to the statue. She was convicted on 7 counts of wire fraud and sentenced to federal prison. Trump pardoned her in April 2025 before she served a single day of her sentence. The pardon statement described her as, quote, a great American patriot. There was no mention of Charleston's Hartfield's family, who are still waiting for a memorial that never got built. Fiore has been an avid Trump supporter through her whole career. No donor connection was ever documented. This one appears to be a straight political reward for her staunch support. Fiore's case is infuriating, and this next one is just as heinous. It involves an employer stealing directly from his employees and a pardon with a paper trail that's very hard to justify. Paul Walczak owned and operated a chain of nursing homes in Michigan. According to the prosecutors, he ran a years-long scheme where he withheld payroll taxes from his employees' paychecks, money that was supposed to go to their IRS on their behalf, and kept it for himself. Over the course of the scheme, he pocketed approximately $10 million this way. Walczak was stealing money from some of the lowest paid workers in one of the most demanding jobs in the country for years. He was convicted and sentenced to federal prison. Weeks before his pardon, his mother, a frequent guest at Mar-a-Lago, made a $1 million donation to a pro-Trump super PAC. It was by far the largest political donation she ever made in her life. Her son was pardoned, and the DOJ never addressed the convenient timing of the events. Alright, we've covered a few disgusting stories back to back, so now it's time for a bit of a comedic break. George Santos was elected to Congress in 2022 representing a district in New York. Almost immediately after his election, journalists began investigating the fact that he, shall we say, exaggerated on his resume. He lied about having a degree and graduating near the top of his class. He claimed he worked for Citigroup and Goldman Sachs, but neither company has any record of him ever working there. He claimed his mother was at the World Trade Center during the 9/11 attacks. It was later revealed that his mother hasn't been in the US since 1999. The list goes on, but alas, being a giant fucking liar is not illegal per se. Then came the federal charges for actually stealing money. Santos was charged with wire fraud, identity theft, and using campaign donor funds to pay for personal expenses like designer clothes, Botox, and his OnlyFans subscription. He pleaded guilty to 13 federal counts and he was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. His own colleagues in Congress voted to expel him, making him the very first Republican and only the 6th congressman in history to be kicked out of office. He was also the first congressman to be kicked out without previously being convicted of a crime or, get this, supporting the Confederacy. In October 2025, Trump commuted his sentence and he was immediately released from prison. Trump's order also canceled his fines and financial restitutions he had not yet paid out. The reason for the pardon? Apparently, yeah, he's a lying cheat, but he was, quote, horribly mistreated in prison and he always voted Republican. Yeah, he's a rogue, a naughty boy, a little rascal, but there have been far worse people that haven't been to prison, like that other guy who did a worse thing. So what Georgie here did was not that bad, and the poison gods have been very mean to him. But he voted for me, so he gets a pass. Unbelievable. After his brief congressional career, he started an OnlyFans account. But it wasn't for adult content, but rather a behind-the-scenes look at his life and work. So there you have it, a literal conman pardoned just because he always voted red. But as bad as this looks, somehow it gets worse. Trevor Milton founded Nikola, an electric truck company that was one of the most hyped startups in America. At its 2020 peak, Nikola's market cap has hit $34 billion, even exceeding the market cap of Ford at one point. Trevor Milton was a visionary, a new Elon Musk, if you will. There was only one problem. The trucks didn't actually work. Nikola released a promo video showing one of their trucks in action speeding down the highway. It was later revealed that they, get this, towed the truck to the top of the hill and just filmed it rolling downhill. Milton was convicted in 2022 on 3 counts of securities and wire fraud for lying to investors about Nikola's technology, its revenue, its partnerships, and its capabilities. He was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. Then, in 2024, Milton donated nearly $2 million to Trump's political committees. He was pardoned in 2025 before his appeal had even been decided. This means there wasn't even a legal argument the courts had failed him in some way. The White House claimed that Milton had been a victim of, quote, prosecutorial overreach. Now, if this sounds like literally buying your way out of jail, that's because that's exactly what it is. But the $2 million legal bribe is literal pocket change compared to our next case. Coming in at number 2, we move on to a financial entanglement worth tens of billions of dollars, and a pardon that several senators have called an outright threat to national security. To understand this case, you first need to understand what Changpeng Zhao actually pleaded guilty to, because the news at the time vastly undersold the story. CZ is the founder of Binance. the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the world. In November 2023, Binance reached a settlement with the Justice Department that was at the time the largest corporate criminal penalty in American history, $4.3 billion. Binance deliberately failed to implement anti-money laundering controls. As a result, it became a channel for certain bad actors to move their money freely, including the likes of Hamas, Al-Qaeda, and other jihadists. Binance also processed transactions for users in Iran, Cuba, Syria, and Russia in violations of the US sanctions. It was used to fund everything from trafficking guns, drugs, and other stuff. CZ and other executives were aware of what was happening and made a decision to keep the money flowing anyway. He was sentenced to 4 months in prison, a lenient punishment by most assessments. So CZ served his time, he was released, and case closed, right? Well, not quite. In October 2025, Trump pardoned CZ, wiping his conviction from the federal record. Why? Well, it's because Trump and his family have a vested interest in the crypto industry. In 2024, Trump's family launched a cryptocurrency venture called World Liberty Financial. Binance, CZ's company, is one of the investors in Trump's company. Zhao gets a pardon to restore his clean record and gets the ability to operate freely in the US markets. Some senators call this pardon a direct threat to national security, given Binance has a documented history of dealing with literal terrorist organizations. This is just scratching the surface, so if you want the full story, you can watch my other video about Trump's crypto empire. I know, Maxwell didn't get a pardon yet. But the Maxwell story is so heinous, it absolutely deserves to top the list. And once you know the background story, you're going to see why. Ghislaine was Big E's right-hand woman, and to this very day, the only person to actually see the inside of a jail cell on account of her connection with the most famous child enthusiast in the world. She was convicted in December 2021, and she's currently serving a 20-year prison sentence. Now, let's talk what's been happening behind the scenes. Maureen Comey was the lead federal prosecutor on the Maxwell case. She's also the daughter of James Comey, the FBI director Trump fired back in 2017. In April 2025, the Trump admin fired Maureen on account that she was James Comey's daughter and she therefore could not be trusted. That's not speculation, by the way. That's the official reason they gave for her firing. Then there's Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche is the current Attorney General for the Justice Department. Before that, he was Trump's personal criminal defense attorney. In early 2025, the DOJ under Blanche conducted a review of Maxwell's case, including a direct interview with Ghislaine herself. The DOJ never revealed what the interview was about, what was discussed, and what was the whole purpose of the interview. What we do know is that Ghislaine is currently sitting in a minimum security prison in Bryan, Texas, where she gets a, shall we say, preferential treatment. Inmates report she has a room to herself, she has used the chaplain's office for out-of-hour visits, and she gets preferential access to supplies, mail, and even service dogs. The Bureau of Prison officials claim these protocols are for safety precautions. Other inmates claim they were severely disciplined or transferred to higher security facilities just for speaking to journalists about this. Ghislaine is currently working on filing a commutation application and pursuing other avenues for release. Whether or not she will get a pardon, only time will tell.